Hey everyone, I'm having the same problem with the YouTube again, so we're just delayed for a second. I couldn't tell you why or what I did last time, but
Head that way. Over there. Hopefully they haven't left. Not that one, but tagged a couple times.
okay, I fixed it.
The left for it.
I'm starting.
Scanner complete.
Come on, a little more, a little more, a little more.
Mission completed.
Hello everyone and welcome to this year's episode of Where the Babies Roam, a shark tagging adventure. I'm Kylie Vandy Wingard, your moderator, and today we have an exciting adventure lined up for you all. Get ready to dive into the world of ocean giants because today we're going on an epic journey to meet some very cool top ocean predators. We're here at a few sites where the babies roam. That is to say, one of the few juvenile white shark nurseries off the coast of California, where great white sharks from ages 0 to 6 socialize, hunt, and grow. These great white sharks are some of the most amazing predators in the ocean, and what's even more incredible is that scientists are working hard to learn all about them, and you get to be right here with us. We'll be joined shortly by our host, Dr. Gwen Goodmanlowe, and our resident white shark researcher, Dr. Chris Lowe of CSU Long Beach's Shark Lab. These guys are out on the water right now looking for sharks to study, and together we'll learn more about their anatomy, their biology, and their role in the ocean ecosystem. We'll answer your questions, show you some cool behind-the-scenes action, and get up close and personal with some of the ocean's most misunderstood and magnificent creatures. Let's go ahead and let's get our researchers going here. Gwen and Chris, how's it going out there?
It's pretty amazing today. I can't believe how flat calm it is.
Exactly. Exactly. It doesn't get better than this.
It does not. Before we get started, we wanted to introduce the crew today. So, Chris, take it away.
So back here on the helm, our boat captain is Dr. James Anderson. Boy, Dr. Anderson's been helping us study these white sharks for almost 6 years. We have our staff member, field technician, Amanda, who's going to be on our dip cam. We'll tell you more about that in a minute. And then we have a co-founder of Ocean Lab and our camera one. This is Dre. On our other boat, we have Captain Steve McCullough on the Phyllis Ann, who's helping us out and has been helping us for many years. And we have our other Ocean Lab co-founder, Dan Stetson, who's our camera two. Back on the Valkyrie, which is our mothership, we have our drone captain, and that is Delaney. And then we have Tom Peterson, who's the captain of the Valkyrie. So we have a big team here, and we're out here to tag some white sharks.
And hopefully learn some more about them. So, I have heard that this is considered to be a white shark nursery. So, what on earth is a nursery? And what is a nursery for white sharks?
Great question. And if we think of nurseries in terms of the way we think of people, a nursery is a place that has a bassinet or something like that. You keep your baby safe, right? Or your toddler safe. So think of this as a place for infant and toddler white sharks. So it's a safe place. Females give birth somewhere, we don't know where, but the babies seek out these habitats, and they'll spend a couple years here hanging out, periodically leaving but coming back. Safety is probably the key feature. Water temperature is another key feature. And because they spend weeks to months here, that has to be fun.
Okay. So, all right. So, I mean, it looks really calm today, right? And the beach looks amazing. The waves don't look so big. So, my guess is that a lot of people use this beach too. So, how do the people using the beach and this nursery ground for white sharks? How do they commingle? Is there a problem with that? Do they know each other are there? What's going on with that?
So that's a great question. So far, we haven't seen a problem. So what we do know is these young white sharks like to use the beaches that we also like to play around. So for surfing and swimming and bodyboarding and all those fun things we like to do, all those activities are close to shore. So the fact that we're doing these activities in the same place where these sharks like to hang out, you would think, okay, maybe an accident's going to happen. Somebody's going to make a mistake. Somebody's going to get hurt. You haven't seen that.
Really?
So that's a really interesting question because it's different than the way we think of white sharks.
Right.
So one of the things we found using all our different technologies, whether it's drones or tracking or telemetry, is that the sharks largely ignore people at the beach.
That's so interesting because, I know a lot of people that when they hear the word great white shark, which is the same thing as white shark, right? When they hear that, they're like, I'm never going in the water. I'm not going anywhere near them. So it's so interesting that you're saying it's kind of the opposite of what people think.
Exactly. And I didn't even believe that myself. I was a little leery about getting in the water in these places where there are white sharks everywhere until we began to better understand what's going on. And what's been cool is all this data is building and mounting. We're learning more and more about the sharks because they're here. We have the technology to study them. And what we're finding is because humans aren't a threat, because we don't even know they're there most of the time, and we're not considered food, they ignore us.
Wow.
And that really surprised me.
That's really interesting. So how many sharks would you say in a given year would be using this area specifically?
So at this area right here, we saw in one single day 40 white sharks.
Wow. And how many people were there that day?
100.
100. And do the people actually know the white sharks are there? Are they seeing them?
So a lot of times they do,
Okay.
when they're close to shore, when the fins break the surface. But most of the time they can't.
Interesting. Yeah.
So it depends on, like conditions. This is really
Right,
that common.
right, really
I'll be shocked if we don't see a shark fin literally in a minute.
Wow.
And they're so close to shore. I mean, look how close we are to the beach.
They're amazing.
So it's probably about 15 feet deep right here where the boat is. And it's just going to keep getting shallower as we get in. And the sharks will get within maybe 5 or 10 feet of the beach, as long as there's enough water for them to swim. So, the question we've been trying to answer is why are they here? What are they doing while they're here? And do they pose a risk to people?
So that brings me back to in the very beginning, when we first started talking about it, you said something about water temperature, that you thought it was protected, there was food. Let's talk about the water temperature. So what is the optimal water temperature for the baby white sharks, but also the adult white sharks?
So what's interesting about white sharks is that they are endotherms, which means they can keep their body temperature warmer than the water. And that's unusual because most sharks are ectotherms, meaning their body temperature is the same temperature as the water. The advantage of keeping their body core warm is they can swim faster, they can dive deeper, and they can go into colder water than many other species. So the key here is the babies have all the same equipment as the adults.
Okay.
But because their bodies are smaller, they can't hold the heat. They can't keep the heat as well. So in that way, when they're in here close to the beach, they're acting like an ectotherm.
Okay. So they're using the warmer water to kind of heat up their bodies?
Exactly.
Okay.
And that makes them more efficient.
Got it.
So they're more efficient eating.
Okay.
They want to eat more. They gain weight faster because the water's warmer. So even though they have the capability of keeping their body core warm, because their surface to volume ratio is so large, they lose a lot of the heat to the water.
Interesting. Okay, so what is the optimal temperature then for these white sharks?
So what my grad student Emily Spurgeon found from her research is somewhere between probably about 65 degrees and probably about 72 degrees is their favorite.
That seems kind of cool to me.
I know for you, I can see why. But for them, if it gets below 60 degrees, they don't like that. And that seems to be a cue to drive a southern migration.
Interesting. Okay. So one of the reasons why they're inshore is because it's warmer. The water is shallower here, so it's warmer. So if the water temperature gets too warm for them, would they just go offshore and stay offshore, or would they move north?
So that's a great question. And some of it we can and can't answer.
Okay.
So we have to use a combination of technologies to do that. So when we know they're inshore is using a technology called acoustic telemetry.
Okay.
And the sharks have to be very close to the receivers to detect them. If they go out a couple kilometers offshore, let's say a mile offshore, we can't detect them.
Oh,
So then we use other types of tags, like satellite tags, which will tell us how deep they're going and potentially how far offshore they're going. But that technology doesn't get as good spatial resolution.
okay.
So we know how far they migrate,
Uh-huh.
for example, using satellite tags.
Okay.
And we know how much time they spend in close to shore using acoustic tags, but then we have gaps.
Okay.
So then we have to use combinations of technology to try to answer, fill in those gaps.
Okay, so before we get into the technology, which we're going to get into a lot, since we are talking about water temperature, can you explain or do you know how the sharks are changing their behavior or movement pattern based on climate change, which we know is real? So, because we know that the water temperature has been increasing, and so is the air temperature, right? So, how is that affecting the sharks' movement, populations, behavior, things like that?
So the tricky part about climate change research is it takes decades.
Right.
You have to look at things over long periods of time. So we've been tagging and tracking juvenile white sharks in Southern California for almost 20 years now. And what we've learned from that is that migration patterns are changing or shifting. So for example, after 2015, we saw animals that only were as far north as this location.
Okay.
After 2015, we started to see a nursery show up in Monterey Bay. And the reason for that is Monterey Bay is the one spot on the Central California coast that's getting warmer and warmer and warmer.
Really?
The last 30 years, it's getting warmer. And now it's warm enough to hold a nursery.
So there's actually a nursery up there.
Yes.
Wow, that is crazy.
And we attribute that directly to climate change.
Okay.
Because the oceans are getting warmer and warmer. So what we predict will happen is these sharks are going to keep moving further north to find more suitable temperatures.
Okay, but in the wintertime, typically they go down to Baja, right?
Correct.
So do you think that southern distribution is going to start moving up, or do you think they'll go back down to Baja?
No, I think that southern distribution will start moving north. And the reason is it gets too hot.
Okay.
So, for example, we know they don't like the babies
Yeah.
in particular don't like water temperatures below 60,
Uh-huh.
and they don't like water temperatures over 84.
Okay.
Now, the bigger ones are even more sensitive. Older temperatures, because of their bigger body,
Right.
heat better.
Right.
And they definitely don't like hot,
Okay.
so they prefer cool.
So this brings me again back to the nursery. So we know that this is a nursery for baby sharks, but are the moms coming here and giving birth in this nice protected area like whale zoo in the Baja Lagoons, right? It's a protected area, the moms give birth there. So are the mom white sharks giving birth here too?
We don't think so. And the reason why we don't think so is we don't see big females in close to the beach where we see the babies. So we think that females are giving birth offshore. And remember, those babies are incubating in a warm mom, right? And when that female gives birth to them, she wants to do that in a place that's safe and discreet, right? Because she's kind of indisposed, pushing out pups. So one place that may happen is kind of between here and the islands.
Okay.
And maybe they're doing that at depth.
Okay.
And that's why nobody has ever seen white shark give birth.
So what's the youngest white shark you've ever seen in this area?
So the way we can estimate that is if we catch them, they have a yolk scar where their yolk used to be. And if they're really newborn, that will be kind of reddish, sometimes almost to the point where it's bleeding.
Wow.
And that's because that scar wound is healing
Okay.
from absorbing all the yolk. So we've found some babies with really red scars. And they were the smallest we've measured.
Okay.
So they may be a couple days old.
Wow. So that means that the females can't be too far away giving birth, right?
Exactly.
Maybe like right offshore or something, but they could be farther away as well.
Yep. And
Yeah.
then the question is, how do they know to come inshore?
Right.
So we think that's driven by temperature.
Okay.
So if females give birth to them at depth,
Uh-huh.
and they're being born into cold water, and you are incubating in a warm mom,
Right.
that should drive you to warm.
Right.
So that means the closer you get to shore, the warmer the water gets. So we think that's what brings them into the beach.
Okay.
And because the water's shallow here, there are fewer predators.
Right.
So fewer big sharks, fewer orca
Right.
that love to eat sharks. So that's what makes this a fish.
Okay. So how many pups, babies, does a mom give birth to?
So a female can give birth to anywhere between 2 and 15 babies.
Wow.
Yes. At a time.
Really?
They're born at about 4.5 feet long, about 40 pounds apiece. And then, we don't know whether smaller females give birth to smaller litters,
Okay.
bigger females give birth to bigger litters.
Okay.
There's very little known about
Interesting.
this.
Go ahead. Sorry.
So that's part of the problem.
Okay.
So we know a little bit, And the reason why we know a little bit is because fishermen have caught, maybe 10 pregnant females
Okay.
that scientists have been able to examine, cut open, and see the babies, how big they are, how many there are. That's it.
Okay, so here's a question. If a mom is giving birth to two, has two pups developing in there, or a mom's giving birth that's developing 15 pups, if there's only two in there, would they be born larger? Because, I mean, a mom can't hold 15 pups that are 45 pounds each. I mean, that would, she'd
Yep.
be huge,
Yep.
right? So is there any information on that?
We don't really know.
Interesting.
Yeah. So we don't know whether, again, it's litter size,
Right.
or whether the small litter size means you give birth to bigger
Right,
pups.
right.
From the very few sharks that have been studied, it appears that the pups that were in that 15 pups that were in that big female, she, I believe, was 17 or 18 feet long.
Wow.
They were still 4 feet.
Wow.
They hadn't been born yet.
Wow.
So
Okay, that's
that's a lot of big babies.
Crazy.
Imagine how
Can't even
rotund she
imagine.
was. Probably as wide as the boat.
That's so big, yeah. Okay, so another question. We talked about that this is a great place for them to eat. So what are they eating? Because we know that when they're young, they don't eat marine mammals yet. Yay. Sorry.
Yeah, I know. So, and that was kind of a tricky thing to answer because we don't want to catch the sharks and kill them. It's
Right.
still like what's in their stomachs. So what we can do is we can take a biopsy of muscle. We can take a little punch of muscle. And from that muscle, the old saying, you are what you eat. If we know the isotopic concentrations, the chemical concentrations of what's in the muscle came from their food. So then what we can do is we can sample all the potential prey there and we can look at its chemical composition. We can compare that to the muscle of the shark.
It's fascinating.
And that's what tells us what they could be eating.
Okay.
So I had a grad student, Jamila Samara Chacon, that did that work. And what she found was that they're primarily, when they're inshore, they're eating stingrays, they're eating flatfish, they're eating croakers. These are all things that live in the bottom.
Okay.
But a predominance of that
Yeah.
are small rays and sharks.
Well, it's those stingrays. I mean, I've been stung by those barbs before, and that is painful. So do they eat one and then say, I'm not eating that again because that hurt me? Or, what? I mean, or do they eat a lot of them and they don't care? Do they feel the barbs?
Good question, but clearly they eat a lot of them.
Okay.
Even if they get stung. We do find barbs stuck in their jaws, stuck in their stomachs. So clearly they're getting stung.
Huh.
Whether it hurts enough to prevent them from eating in the future, we don't think so.
Interesting.
And round stingrays, which we refer to as pancakes because they're about the size of a pancake, are the most abundant. So if they're going to catch and eat anything, that should be what they're eating. All the sharks that we've done dissections on, we've looked in their stomachs, every single one is containing stingrays.
Really?
Whether it's bat rays
Yeah.
or round rays.
And how big are they?
So the round rays are about the size of a dinner plate, and
Okay.
bat rays can get up to 80 pounds. So their wingspan are about this big. So it's likely that the bigger juveniles are preferring bat rays
Okay.
because more bang for your buck,
Right.
and that the babies are eating pancakes.
But I mean, I've seen, baby stingrays before. They're like this big.
Oh, yeah.
So do they eat that
Yeah,
size too?
Those are the medallion pancakes.
Very nice. Okay. Where's the bacon? Come on.
Exactly.
Okay, so we should probably talk about technology
Yeah.
because we've been talking about all these kinds of things, but we don't really know what you do.
Right.
What do you do?
Right.
When
So-
you're out here all the time.
Right now, the great thing about technology is it's working even when you aren't. Okay, so right now, the technology that we're using to find the sharks are drones. So Delaney's got a drone in the air. She's flying around trying to spot sharks in the air. And she can do that much better than we can from just driving around the boat. So once she spots a shark, she's up at around 180 feet, which gives her a big field of view.
Wow.
And if the shark's near the surface, she can see them
Okay.
very easily. So then what you'll do is drop the drone down, and that tells us that she's on a shark, and then we'll drive the boat to that till we get close enough where we can see it.
Okay.
And then once we get close enough to see it, we can dip a camera underneath. And that's where Amanda comes in. So Amanda's going to dip the camera underneath, and then she's going to review the footage so that we can see if it has claspers or not.
Okay, so what are claspers?
Exactly. So all sharks have pelvic fins, little fins
Okay.
coming off the back. That's where the legs would come from if it was a mammal. And then males have two projections coming off those pelvic fins called claspers.
Okay.
And males will insert the claspers into females for internal fertilization.
Okay.
So even babies
Yeah.
have claspers.
Okay.
So they're sexually differentiated as male at birth. So we can use that to identify whether males or females. So that's our first step. And that's where Amanda comes in, dips the camera underneath, can go back, play it back and go, okay, we got a male, we got a female. Then if we get a chance to go back at that shark, then the next job is to jab a tag in its back. And that tag will stand for 5 years or so and allow us to track the sharks. And because we can see the tag from the air, we can tell if the shark's been tagged.
Okay, let's go back. I have two questions.
Yep.
One is, do you see equal distributions or equal numbers of males versus females in this area?
Yeah, so that's what we expect.
Okay.
So for the sharks that have been examined from females, typically there's a 50-50 sex ratio of males and females
Okay.
in the ones that have
Oh,
been examined
okay.
in females.
Okay.
However, we do see a skewed sex ratio here, which means there's more females. There's almost 3 times as many
Really?
females as males.
Wow.
We're not really sure why.
Okay. All right. My next question is something related to that, which I was so surprised by your answer that I kind of forgot what it was. So we'll have to get back to that.
Okay.
Okay. So, all right. So we have the male versus female. Kylie, do you want to show us some underwater dip cam videos of showing what a female?
I do,
shark
yeah.
looks
So
like?
just so everyone at home who's watching knows, this is going to be a shot of a female shark, so it will not have those 2 little claspers underneath its pelvic fins, but you will see the pelvic fins. All right, back to you guys.
A lot of dolphin action down there. It was it?
Isaac was. Damn it.
Yes.
There's a bunch of them. They just keep going. They keep jumping.
Is Kylie gonna?
You didn't hear me. You guys are back.
You did some get there.
Back there.
You guys are back.
They want
Okay.
Okay, we're back.
All right. So, okay. So, tell me about the technology of so we have the dip cam.
Yep.
We have the drone. The drone does not tag. It's just a spotter kind of thing.
Yep, eyes in
Okay.
the sky.
Eyes in the sky. Okay.
But now when we're ready to tag, we use the technology.
Okay.
so-
So tell me about this
Yes.
thing without stabbing me, please.
I will not stab you. Calm down. All right, this is an acoustic transmitter. So it produces an ultrasonic ping that goes out through the water, and low frequency sounds travel really well through seawater. So every 100 to 200 seconds, this thing puts out a series of pulses. And if the shark carrying this tag gets within 300 yards of one of our underwater receivers, the receiver will log the time, the date, and the ID. Now, we don't know exactly where it is. It's somewhere within that 300-yard radius. So this gets darted underneath the shark's skin, and this will stand for maybe 3 to 5 years and eventually work its way out. So when this gets started in, it's kind of like getting your ears pierced, right? They almost do flinch. We do know they probably get a little pinch of pain, but just like when your ears pierced, eventually it goes away and you don't even know your earrings are in. So this kind of hangs off the animal, kind of like a parasite. And every time that tag is pulsing and it's within 300 yards of receiver, the receiver's log its position. Now, the other cool thing about this technology is if we have a bunch of receivers in a grid along this beach, if a tag is detected by 3 or more receivers at the same time, we can triangulate its position in that area. So we get actual location. So by doing that, we've been able to get fine scale movements of the sharks along these beaches, as well as monitor their movement between nursery sites.
Interesting. Okay, so you said darted in, but what are you like jabbing that in with your hand?
No. So we have a harpoon.
Oh, harpoon.
Yeah.
Okay.
This goes in the end, and when we get close to the shark, we can just dart it in,
Okay.
and this comes off the tip and stays in the shark.
Okay.
And then hopefully we don't tag the same shark twice.
Okay. So, does this hurt the shark? Do we know if sharks feel pain?
We do know they feel pain. Almost all animals feel pain,
Okay.
right? And that's how they respond to positive and negative things in their environment. We believe these things are probably negligible because our biggest challenge is not tagging the same shark twice.
Okay.
And I think we have dolphins going on behind us, which is why we're slowing down. Darn
Why
dolphins.
I'm so excited because I study marine mammals, so this is like the best day ever. Okay, so tell me about what other technology you have.
All right, so we also use satellite tags.
Okay.
And they operate differently. So satellite tags, instead of using low frequency sound, are using high frequency waves, which travel really well through the air and not at all through seawater. So one type of satellite tag that we use are called spot tags. And those, if we catch the shark, get bolted onto its dorsal fin, so that every time the fin breaks the surface, it's sending signals to a satellite in orbit. And then every time it goes underwater, it stops. So I get a text alert saying shark number 105 popped up at this latitude, longitude, time, and date. But it only transmits when the shark's at the surface.
Okay.
The other type of satellite tag we use is called a pop-off archiving satellite tag. And that gets started in like this tag. Same deal. It's got a temperature, light, depth sensor and a little antenna, and it's logging temperature, light, and depth every 30 seconds. At a pre-described time and date, it will release from the shark, float up to the surface, and then it uploads all that temperature, light, and depth data to the satellite, and then downloads it all to me in live face. I can then use that temperature, light, and depth data to recreate a path. Now, the great thing about that is it gives us a really accurate temperature depth that the shark moves through. But by using light level and time of day, we can estimate its position.
Wow.
Not super accurate.
Okay,
It's about
right.
60 nautical miles.
Wow, that's
So
not
the
accurate
shark
at all.
could be at this
Yeah.
beach or on the other side of those mountains.
Okay.
So by combining all that technology, we can ask how much time are they spending next to this beach? How far do they migrate?
All right, so you said something about low frequency for this type and high frequency for the other type. But as far as my limited knowledge on non-marine mammals goes, I thought they could hear at low frequency sounds. So do they hear that? Does it bother them? Do they change their behavior once they can hear the tag?
So sharks' hearing range ranges from about 5 hertz to about 1200 hertz.
Okay.
Human hearing range ranges from 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz.
Okay.
So this tag operates at 9 kilohertz,
Okay.
way above their hearing capacity.
Okay. So even though it's low frequency, it's still above what they can hear.
Exactly.
They're not going to be bothered by it.
Our satellite tags are operating at megahertz range.
Okay.
So those shorter wavelengths travel really well through air. So that's why radio transmitters just don't work.
Oh, just
Physics, I love it.
okay. So do you ever get in the water and tag sharks?
We used to.
You used to.
Yeah. We used to when we had really clear conditions.
Uh-huh.
We would get in the water, and then as a shark would swim by, we'd dart a tag at them. Until one day, one of my students swam into a shark.
Wow.
He couldn't see it. Visibility was so bad. We could see it clearly from the air. He couldn't see it underwater, and he literally bumped into the shark.
Wow.
So we decided that's not safe. So
Oh,
now
wait,
we do it from
it's not safe. I thought you said they don't know other people.
until you try jabbing them with something.
I thought you
right?
said they don't really feel that much pain.
Until you try waking them up from a nap.
Got it. All right. So no more in the water
No
tagging.
more in the water.
Okay,
Tag
so-
from boats or jet skis.
Got it. Okay. Interesting. So tell me about how many are here altogether.
Right. So those numbers change. So
Okay.
what we've learned is that these aggregation sites, these nurseries, are hot for a few years, and then a new one forms somewhere else. And we think that's because they actually feed down their favorite foods to the point where between environmental conditions and the amount of food available, it's no longer worth it to hang out in the spot. So then they move to another spot. So one of the things that we're trying to figure out is what makes a good hotspot a hotspot. So by having an acoustic array here, we've had it here for the last 9 years straight, we've found that this particular hotspot has stayed hot longer than anything.
Really?
Yep. And we've had up to 40 individual white sharks at this very site.
Wow.
So sometimes it gets too crowded. So some of those sharks are leaving, new sharks are coming in. So you have sharks kind of moving back and forth.
All right. So we know that this has been here for about 9 years. Has there ever been one, like, say, in Newport Beach, Newport area, because there's a harbor there?
Yep. So we don't know of a nursery that's been there. We've had one off Long Beach.
Okay.
We've had several in Santa Monica Bay. We've had some off Huntington Beach. They've been short-lived,
Okay.
but there were, 12 to 20 sharks there for a couple of weeks to a couple of months, and then they broke down.
Interesting.
So the
Not
question,
even years.
not even years.
Wow.
And the question is why? So we're still trying to figure some of those things out, and we know how they respond to temperature. We know how they respond to food availability.
Right.
And then the next question is competition. So one of the things we have seen over the years is, and it used to be where the babies roam, now it's where the toddlers and teenagers roam. So we find that sharks come back to these sites year after year after year, and they get bigger, bigger, and bigger. For example, early this morning, we saw a shark that was probably 12 feet long. That 12-foot shark could have been a baby here, come back every single year. And now they're toddlers here, 7 and 8 years, which we also saw this morning. That 12-footer kid very easily from the 7-footers.
Wow.
So it could be a reason why some of the babies go, this isn't a good nursery anymore. Maybe it's time to find a new spot.
Okay. So do sharks sense environmental changes other than water temperature? Like, have you ever seen like hurricane? Well, we don't get that too much, but we get storms and earthquakes. Because I know, like in Florida, they say the sharks leave, like Tampa area, they will go out or offshore when a hurricane's coming. So can they sense things like that? Do we see any? Do you have any all of a sudden leaving and then there's an earthquake, that day or the next day?
So we haven't seen it for earthquakes, but we have seen it for storms.
Okay.
And it's really cool because people have seen it across a bunch of different species in a bunch of different places. So one of the things we had a tropical storm that came into Southern California first in 90 years, 2 years ago. And it hit San Diego particularly hard. And we had a bunch of sharks tagged there. We're monitoring them. And what was really cool is a bunch of the sharks left during the storm, and went into La Jolla Cove.
Wow.
Which we normally don't see them.
Okay.
And it was more protected in La Jolla Cove. But some of the sharks, the bigger ones, stayed. So what's really cool is it could be that those bigger sharks have more experience riding through storms in the past and knew what to do.
Okay.
Because we expect it when the barometer drops,
Right.
when a tropical storm
Right.
comes in, that's usually the cue for sharks to leave. But we know that experience means a lot, right? Getting an animal to move for no good reason, can put them in harm's way. So they're probably relying on their experience.
Okay. So let's talk about diet for a second. So they change diet as they get older, right? So how old are they when they start to move from pancakes to fish, maybe bigger fish, eating other sharks of the same species, to marine mammals? When do they start doing that, and how long does that take?
Yeah, so I think it's very much like people, right? So we start off as babies drinking milk. You learn how to suckle. You don't have to think about that. You do it instinctually, right? And then what happens is they're trying to catch prey for the first time. So the easiest, most abundant thing is what they're going to eat. But that is small, and you have to eat a lot of them. So therefore, the more experienced and skilled you get, you can catch bigger and better things. And that's basically what we see here happen, right? So we think the bigger juveniles give up on pancakes. They eat them every once in a while, but are focusing on bigger things like bat rays. So remember, a round stingray size of a plate, bat ray, 80 pounds, probably only a bigger, more experienced juvenile white shark can take those down. Now, at some point, they're going to start transitioning to marine mammals. And we see that in their dentition. So when they're babies, their bottom teeth are much like mako teeth. They're sharp and pointy. But as they age, their bottom teeth get wider and broader and more serrated. And it's about that size where they start transitioning to try to feed on marine mammals.
How would they know, though? How would they know that a marine mammal, like, oh, I'm getting older, I should now go for a seal or sea lion? How would they even know that?
So I suspect a lot of that learning comes from scavenging.
Okay.
Right. So now our marine mammal populations are coming back. There's a lot more. There are a lot more along the coast that die and are dead, and a shark gets a chance to give it a little milk, and their fat content is really high.
Right.
So it's a big bang for your buck. So once they have a taste, they can associate the odor, the sounds, the things that tell them that this is a good prey item. Now they have to learn how to catch them, and that can take years.
Okay.
It can literally
Yeah,
take a
they're
white
pretty
shark
fast.
years to learn how to do that.
Right. So, two questions. One is, are people like more prone to getting attacked by an adult than they are by a juvenile or a baby? Like, you said people don't really know they're here. People, parents have their kids in the water here. For the babies, if they were adults there, would you be nervous about them being in the water with adults? Or more nervous because they now are eating marine mammals?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. And the problem is we don't really know why sharks occasionally bite people. So unprovoked bites are when you're out minding your own business and a shark comes over and bites you. And we don't really know the motivation. We don't know whether they're biting that person because they mistake them for food. We don't know whether they're biting that person because they float around. So the same holds true for the juveniles. But what we typically see is that the really small ones tend to avoid people. And we think it's because they don't know what they are and they could be dangerous. So the best thing is to and remember, at a beach, humans are largely flotsam.
Right.
They're floating objects. We don't even know the sharks are
But they're also splashing and making noise and things like that, right? So that could be scary.
Yeah, and that could also draw attention.
Right.
So they go over and investigate it and then go, okay, it's not chasing me and it doesn't smell like food. So therefore, I'm going to ignore it. And it could be what we might expect to see in the future is fewer accidental bites by adults because they now know what humans smell like, sound like, look like.
Okay.
That's just a guess, right? But what we see here on any given day is that a white shark is swam by a swimmer or surfer and they did not know.
Wow.
That is happening any given day in California.
So I've seen shark jaws and they have thousands of teeth. It looks to be like rows and rows of teeth. Why do they have all these rows of teeth? And how many rows of teeth do they have and how many teeth do they have in their lifetime?
So that's a common theme among all congregate fishes, right? So sharks, skates, and rays all have cartilaginous teeth, which means their teeth are anchored in cartilage, which isn't really a good anchor.
Huh.
So every time they bite into something hard, the teeth just fall out. So remember, mammals have bony skeletons. Our teeth are socketed into bones. They're not designed to fall out. So as the result of losing teeth all the time, they constantly replace them. So this is known as serial tooth replacement. So if you think of a shark's jaw or stingray's jaw as a conveyor belt, about every 30 days, the front row falls out. And a new row is being developed behind the gum
Okay, so is that happening throughout their entire lives?
throughout their entire lives.
Okay.
And it starts even at humans.
Wow. What about if they just lose a tooth? They bite into a marine mammal and it's got, thick skin and one tooth pops out. Will that one tooth come back out and replace it?
No, it's probably the whole row.
Probably the whole row.
Because remember, it's a constant conveyor belt that's rotating forward.
Okay.
So the longest they may be without a tooth
Yeah.
or a couple teeth would only be a couple days.
Okay.
And that new row is coming in. So the second row behind the first row is almost functional.
Oh, wow.
Right? Yeah. So if these don't do the job,
Right.
you got these that can
Okay.
do the job.
Interesting.
So they're never without the ability to eat. And the cool thing about that is you always have a sharp edge. So your teeth never get dull. For a lot of other animals, think of orca,
Yeah.
right? Especially when big sharks
Yeah.
grind their teeth
Yes.
down, they're eventually going to have nothing.
Right.
But these sharks will always have fresh sharp.
Okay, so two questions. One, what about the planktivorous sharks, like whale sharks? They're not eating marine mammals or fish or anything like that. So do they still have the same kind of sharp teeth? And do they still have rows of teeth?
They do. They do have rows of teeth. Their teeth aren't really used for feeding. So in those cases, their teeth are used for mating, especially
Okay.
for males. So some of it might help retain prey. Some of it might help grab hold of bigger
Okay,
things if
yeah.
they can. But most of that feeding is done actually deep inside their mouth. So as they're gulping in huge amounts of water, the way their gills are shaped towards their esophagus creates this cool turbine that causes things, objects in the water, which are plankton or mysids or little shrimp or even fish eggs, to congregate in the water that drives it back by the throat. So the water gets expelled, but these objects congregate, and all they have to do then is just swallow.
Okay, so it's not like baleen whales who use their tongue to scrape the baleen off. They're not using their tongue to scrape anything. They're just swallowing that bolus.
Exactly, and they probably use their tongue to push it further back.
Okay.
So most of that tongue action is just to close the mouth,
Okay.
right? But actually, all of that is the cyclonic action that's created by the position of the gills, causing all those particles to come out and get sucked back into the mouth. So one of my former students, Misty Page Strand, did all the research on this and has a patent because she'll
Wow.
probably invent a better vacuum.
Wow. I'll buy that.
So, I will too.
I'm glad you said mysids because I thought you said mices at first.
No
And I
mices.
thought, wow.
No
Mices? They're eating mices? Okay, so that leads me to speaking about the teeth and how they have all these teeth they have their whole lives. How long do this species of shark, how long do white sharks live?
That's a great question. So we believe white sharks can live up to 7 years.
7?
70.
70.
70 years old.
Wow. How do you know that?
So the way we age sharks is by their vertebrae. So when they're small, their vertebrae are small. And as they grow, they add layers to the outside, like a gobstopper can, right? So every year they lay down a small band and a big band. And if we know how many bands are laid down per year, we can count the rings, just like in a tree, and estimate how old it is. So one of the techniques that researchers use to estimate the ages of long sharks, they're not using long, so radioactive. So back in the 50s, when we were doing all these atomic bomb tests, you put a lot of radioactive carbon into the atmosphere, and it immediately went to the ocean. It was incorporated into anything that kills. So what you could do is count back the bands until you saw this radioactive bomb spike, that radioactive carbon spike.
Yeah.
And then that tells you that rate goes back to the 50s. So for example, for something like a Greenland shark, where they use the eyelids, same
Right, I was
thing.
gonna say, they do that with whales too,
They
the islands.
age them to 370 years old.
But with these white sharks, 70.
70.
Wow, that's so crazy.
So if you figure a white shark has 50 teeth, in
Right.
each entire front row, top and bottom, and they're losing them every month. They live to be 70. It'll produce 30,000.
Holy cow. Okay, so we haven't really seen any of the live drone footage, I don't think. So, Kylie, do you want to roll some drone footage so we can show everybody like what that looks like?
Because any minute now we're going to see a shark, but we're going to prepare you for that exciting moment.
Yeah, so for viewers who are watching at home, down here in the, I guess if you're all seeing me, it's this way. It's in your bottom right-hand corner. That's our live drone feed. We have Delaney, our drone pilot, who's been looking for sharks this whole time. We haven't had any luck yet, but I'm going to show you guys what that would look like. All right, Quiss and Gwen, we are back to you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. So let's talk a little bit about reproduction because you said that some of the sharks use their teeth for mating, but I don't really get that.
Okay. So in order for males to mate, they have to insert one of their claspers. So that requires grabbing, bolting. So males actually use their mouths, and what they try to do is grab the female on the pectoral fin to hold her in position to mate. So, and it's not a fast process. It's a
Okay.
very slow process. And this is where it's kind of cool. Females get bigger than males. So females actually get to dictate who they mate with.
Wow.
As a small male that's trying to mate with a big female, a female will go, no, you're not going to mate with you. They just shake them off.
Okay.
But a bigger male may have a better chance of hanging on to a female. A bigger male may actually be better fit to sire that. So that's how the process starts. Pregnancy in sharks vary, right? So some sharks lay external eggs, like horn sharks and small sharks lay an egg case on the bottom. Females leave the egg behind, the embryo develops and incubates and then hatches out the egg. No parental care at all. It's all on its own. Other females have eggs that are fertilized internally, egg hatches internally, and then the embryo continues to develop and uses up its yolk. When it uses up its yolk, what moms will do, white sharks do this, is the female will continue to ovulate eggs that the embryos eat while they're in the female's uterus. So they're big egg eaters. They'll get these big giant Buddha bellies full of these ovaries.
Wow.
And that's what they're using as nutrients because they're filled with lots of Then the female stops ovulating eggs, and to finish off the pregnancy, the entire lining of the uterus gets really fuzzy like a shag carpet, and it secretes a glycoprotein the embryos drink,
Wow.
and that finishes off their development, enabling them to be born at 4.5 feet.
That's crazy.
So different species of sharks have different
Right.
strategies, but generally they produce large, well-designed pups
Okay.
that have teeth and ready to go because they're on their own.
They're on their own, right? They don't care. Once they hatch out, they're just swimming, trying to figure out what's going on.
Exactly. So a white shark, we think, has a pregnancy ranging anywhere from 10 to 12 months. Some species of sharks, like spiny dogfish, which is a shark, may have 20-month gestation.
Wow.
So over 2 years.
So, they talked about, it's been on the news where these sharks have been in an aquarium for many years and then all of a sudden give birth. So, what is that?
Yeah.
So, is that like them storing the sperm and they're mating in the wild and then they store the sperm and then they get fertilized or what?
Yeah, so we know that sharks can store sperm. Can also do that because remember, mating can be rigorous and they can get chewed up. So the way you avoid having to mate again is store sperm to last you to the next cycle. And you're exactly right. There are probably 5 or 6 different species that have been held in captivity that have suddenly magically produced babies, and there were no males.
Right.
So at first they thought they maybe were storing sperm, but then it turns out when they genetically compared, the offspring was a genetic clone.
Wow.
That is known as parthenogenesis. So in the absence of males, a female can produce a viable offspring. And as vertebrates go, they're not the only ones that can do it, but it seems like a lot of them can do it. So the question is why?
Why? Yeah.
Well, if you're on a remote island and you happen to swim there and you're by yourself and you're going, well, I'm getting old, I've got these eggs, what can I do with them? Maybe I can make a baby, and that might give time for a male to eventually show up. So we don't really know the exact reason why that really is retained, but it does explain this concept of like these island biogeographies where these populations rise. You have to ask yourself, how would sharks find Hawaii? Something like a white-tip reef shark, which is kind of a small, kind of lazy reef shark. How the heck did they get to Hawaii? So it could be things like Genesis, miracle birth.
Okay. Another question about this reproduction thing. So I know in cats, every kitten in a litter can be from a different father.
Yes.
So in sharks, have they done the DNA of the different, when they catch the female on the line and they, do a necropsy and they pull the babies out, the developed babies, have they done DNA on them to see if they're from different males?
Yep. So that's actually really common.
Really?
Giant sharks and rays, where this thing called multiple return, which means females are mating with more than one male, and then their litter will be separate from several males.
Interesting.
So that appears to be very, very common. And some of it could be based on sperm storage.
Okay.
But we also know there's this thing called sperm competition.
Right.
So the first male that mates with a female, when it inseminates a female, its sperm packet is really good. If another male immediately mates with that female, that first male sperm is blocking the second male sperm from reaching the place where fertilization occurs. So we don't know to what extent how successful it is. But either way, males are trying their best to make sure that all the eggs get fertilized by them. And females are mating with more than one male, probably because it's better for them to produce pups from multiple males.
Okay, so that means they do have different fathers, or they don't have different
They
fathers?
absolutely have different
Okay,
fathers.
interesting. All right. Anything else you want to say about that? About reproduction?
Well, I think
Hey
that
guys,
covers the
before
part, but I'm sure we have questions.
I was gonna say, before we let Chris continue on his tangent, because we all know that Chris could talk about sharks literally till the cows come home.
Forever.
Sorry,
Forever.
till the sharks come home. Hang on. Sorry, everyone. I do have a radio near me, so it's making noise. We do have a bunch of questions coming in, so let's go ahead and jump over to those. There's some really great questions. Lisa wants to know roughly how many juvenile sharks are tagged off the coast of California, and what percentage of the total juvenile shark population do you think that is?
That's a great question. So right now we have probably about 180 to 200 juveniles carrying active tags. We've easily tagged over the last 20 years, probably 400. We don't really know what fraction that is of the entire population. There are some summers where I think we're good and we might be tagging, 10%, but it could be less than that because we don't know where all the aggregations are. In fact, we recently learned that there's another group of sharks that actually hang out offshore by themselves and don't join the aggregations. So that's a great question. I would say probably anywhere between 5%, are the juveniles tagged. In terms of number of white sharks, we really have no idea, but I guess it would be over 3,000, maybe 4,000.
Very cool. On that same note, Lisa also wanted to know, at what point is a white shark no longer considered a juvenile?
Yeah, so that's a great question. It differs between males and females because females get bigger than males and they probably grow a little faster than males. Females mature probably around 12 to 14 feet in length. Males mature probably around 10 to 11 feet in length. In terms of time, for a male, that probably about 10 years. They grow about a foot a year. For females, that's probably 14 to 16 years old, maybe a little later, depending on the population.
Awesome. Okay. Kimberly is wondering, could the water temperature affect if we get more females than males or vice versa?
Oh, that's a great question. So it's very possible that water temperature does influence this. And it's possible that females hang out in one spot, males in another. And that we believe is may also be a common theme across other species of sharks because we see what's called sexual segregation. Males and females separate, particularly as they get older. So it could be that females are selecting these nearshore habitats because there's more food, water's warmer, and that will help them grow faster. And males don't really care. So males can be more wide-ranging and not necessarily spend as much time at the aggregation sites. That's where we tag fewer.
Awesome. Okay, Lisa has a bunch of students who are asking questions, so we're gonna load up some of hers. Let's
Yep.
see. Are there other shark species with nurseries off the coast of California?
Yes. So that's a cool thing. A lot of sharks use Southern California waters as nurseries. So, for example, mako sharks use Southern California bite as a nursery. Even though they're a pelagic offshore shark, we find their babies and they're like this big. They're the cutest little wind-up toys. You know, they're born at about 2 feet long. They use it as a nursery. Blue sharks use it as a nursery. Salmon sharks use the Southern California bite as a nursery. But instead of coming into the beach, they're spending their time offshore. But if you go north, you just don't see babies. You find them down south. And that usually starts in the spring. And that's when the Southern California bite, that area from Santa Barbara down to Baja, is the most productive. So it makes sense. This is where you'd want to come give birth to your babies.
Awesome. Okay, well, on that note, if everyone's here and everyone's giving birth to their babies, is there any sort of competition between different species of sharks? Maybe like one species of shark is attacking another species of shark?
Okay, so competition doesn't necessarily result in two animals fighting, but there can be other ways to compete, like outcompeting. So, for example, if you're a white shark and you really like to eat marine mammals, and you're really skilled at it and you have really good teeth for it, you might be able to get more marine mammals, say, than a big mako. So one of the cool things that we've been seeing in recent years is that big makos, like makos over 10 feet, are now eating seals and sea lions. And we didn't think that was part of their diet because their teeth aren't really designed to do that. But they'll eat them because they're big enough and they're abundant enough populations of seals for them to do that. White sharks are probably better at than makos because they have better equipment for it. So they outcompete them. So in this case, there's so much food that limits competition. In other cases, in nearshore waters, there could be species like gray smoothhounds and leopard sharks that overlap in size, that eat similar things, that may compete for those sorts of things. And that may drive animals to move to different places. Nobody wants to compete. So basically what you want to do is find a niche for yourself where you can do your thing without having to compete. So we think a lot of that decision-making process has evolved over time, allowing these animals to coexist.
Cool. Okay, we're moving on to the topic of tagging. Mateo wants to know, is tagging safe for the shark? Do they feel it when you mark them? I know you mentioned it's kind of like getting your ears pierced.
Yeah, so we do know when we do tag them, we dart the tag in, they do flinch, but our biggest challenge is not tagging the same shark twice. So it doesn't hurt them enough that they're like, oh my God, whatever that thing is, it's gonna hurt me, I gotta get out of town. They basically flinch and then they just go back to swimming. So that's kind of why we relate it to an earring. You know, when you first get that pinch, it kind of hurts, and then once the earring's in, and then it's kind of fine. You forget it's even in place. So we think that basically that process of what we do is very minimal. However, if we can catch the shark, we can flip that shark upside down and put it in what it's called a tonic immobility state. And we can do surgery on the animals and they don't flinch. Then we can insert a transmitter into the body cavity, stitch them up, and when you flip them back, it's like throwing a switch, they make them swim away. So we think that that pain suppression is reduced when they're in that tonic immobility state. So we do know they feel it. We do know that when we tag them, we are making an incision in them. But quite often, those sharks that we release don't just take off. Sometimes they hang around. So we know that the pain that they're experiencing from this process isn't altering their behavior that much.
Very nice. Because we're talking about tagging right now, and I know that the viewers of this session
Kylie,
haven't
did we
gotten
lose you?
Oops. Sorry, guys. I know that we're talking about tagging right now, and the viewers of this session haven't gotten to see a live shark. I thought maybe we would put up some of the footage that we have of tagging
Yes.
topside.
Absolutely,
We'll throw that up for
absolutely. So
everyone.
let's show them that.
All right, everyone. So there you were all able to see that kind of flinch that Dr. Lowe is talking about, and then also that little almost like cylindrical thing right by the dorsal fin. That's that tag that he was showing us earlier. Okay, Chris, let's get some more questions going. Let's do a personal one about Chris, because he hasn't talked about himself yet. What made you want to study sharks?
Yeah, so I grew up on a small island, and there was nothing else to do but swim, dive, and fish. My mom's family had commercial fishermen, whalers, so I've been around the water my whole life. And I love fishing, I love swimming, I love diving. And one day I caught a shark. I didn't know what it was. I was a horrible student. I actually had to go to the library to look it up. And I found a book on sharks, and I was fascinated. I think I was 9. And then I kept reading this book and learning about all these cool things. And then I had to go catch more sharks, of course. And then I wanted to be in the water with them, and I wanted to see them underwater, and that kind of led me to this career. So, I was the first in my family to go to college, and then I told my parents, I think I want to be this thing called a marine biologist. And they're like, is that a real thing? Do you get paid to do that? I said, I don't know, but that's what I want to do. I said, I think I have to go to college for that. And they're like, okay, if that's what you want to do. So I kind of fumbled my way through this thing and eventually got my PhD and have taken over the Shark Lab at Cal State Long Beach, where I can teach the next generation how to do the thing that I love.
Okay, on that note, what is the coolest thing that you've discovered while tagging sharks?
Oh, so the coolest thing that I've discovered while tagging sharks is how far they can actually travel. So, for example, we've tagged babies with satellite tags that we've recorded traveling 3,000 miles in their first year of life. And what I find astounding by that is there was something that cued them to leave. They knew to go south. How did they know to go south? Then they were south, and then they decided to come north. And when they came back north, they came back to the same nursery that we had tagged them at the year before. So how do they know to do that when they get no training from mom or dad? So that to me was pretty darn cool. And then, of course, we get to see all these cool behaviors of what these sharks do between our drone footage. We have underwater cameras that we put out. We've even looked at what they eat based on eDNA. So eDNA is super cool. We could take a water sample, and in that water sample is everything's DNA. Virus DNA, bacteria DNA, dog DNA, people DNA, shark, fish, stingray. You can filter it, and we have barcodes for every single species. In other words, we know what each piece of DNA goes to what species. So based on that, one of my students, Zach Person, did this study where he looked at aggregation sites where there are sharks and aggregation sites where there are no sharks, non-aggregation sites. And what he found was at aggregation sites where there's lots of white shark DNA, there was less stingray DNA. But at a non-aggregation site, no white shark DNA, lots of stingray DNA. So by using this cool technique, we are now able to try to figure out how much food is out there for a white shark. Does that give them a reason to move to another site? So I thought that was really fascinating.
I love that. On the same note of technology, Kimberly wants to know, how long can you receive information from a tag once you've implanted it onto a shark? Or maybe also the ones that are surgically implanted, how long can you receive those?
That's a great question. So those tags that we surgically implant to the body cavity last 10 years. So we can basically track a baby from its infancy almost to adulthood. And we've had sharks that we've been able to track and monitor for 8 years. In fact, some of those sharks, by the time they're 6 years old, that we tagged with an acoustic tag, right here off this beach, have been detected off Kona 6 years later by an acoustic receiver off the island of Kona, off the island, the big island of Hawaii. So we know this technology lasts at least 8 years. So it's a long-term project, but it's enabled us to answer questions that we couldn't answer before.
That is so cool. Okay, we are unfortunately at our time, so everyone, let's say goodbye to Dr. Lowe and Dr. Gwen Goodmanlowe. Thank you guys so much
Bye,
for being out
everybody.
there on
Thank
the
you,
water for
everybody.
us.
Thanks for joining us.
Okay. So thank you everyone for joining today. Just a heads up for those of you, maybe it's your first time joining us. We do an annual show in the spring. We go down to Mexico and we do a gray whale show. So we'll be doing that not next year, but the year after that. This year, what we'll be bringing to you is going to be our manatee show. As long as everything goes correctly for us, we'll be in Florida diving with manatees, which is going to be really amazing. So another opportunity for you guys to get out into the wild through your classroom. So follow us on Eventbrite, follow us on the social media, follow the Shark Lab on social media, and we'll be sure to get you guys that link for that. For now, thank you guys so much for watching.